All right, so there are a lot of things in pickleball that are considered conventional wisdom, things that if you go to a pickleball 101 class, you might hear right off the bat. Or if you watch any pickleball videos out there, these would be the common suggestions regarding pickleball tactics or strategy that you should use. But sometimes what we as pickleball coaches aren't so good at doing is helping people to understand why these different strategies are important. And the truth is, there are a lot of misconceptions out there. So let's take a look at 5 of the most important strategies in pickleball and help you understand why they actually matter. Ready? Let's go. All right, the first strategy we're going to talk about is that you should hit your serve deep in the court. Hit your serve deep. Now, why does that matter? Well, it's not going to keep your opponents back. After all, when your opponents hit their return of serve, they're very likely, if they have any sense of what they're doing, going to hit that return of serve and they're going to run up toward the non-volley line. That's where their partner is, of course, already up there waiting to pounce. And so with a deep serve, you can't keep your opponents back. I've heard people say this before, where hit it deep and your opponents won't be able to get to the net. Well, that's not true. They can get to the net. They have free will. They can return and they can run. But what you can do by hitting your serve deep is you can make their run to the net longer. You can make it harder for them to get exactly where they want. And this has 2 advantages for you. The first is after they hit that return of serve and you and your partner are hitting the 3rd shot, there's a chance that they're not right on top of the line the way they would be if it was a shorter serve. If your opponents aren't careful, if they don't give themselves enough time or they're not quick enough, they might be on their way to the net but not right on top, and that's good for you. The second reason a deep serve is good is because if your opponents realize that they're far behind the baseline and they have further to run, they might hit a higher, slower return, giving themselves more time to get right up to the kitchen. And that's okay, because that higher, slower return, as well as it giving them more time to come forward, it also gives you and your partner more time to get ready for that 3rd shot. So either way, if you're making the returner hit their return from well behind the baseline, you're either going to make it really difficult for them to get to the line in time, or you're likely to give yourself an easier 3rd shot. All right, deep returns of serve. This is something that every beginning pickleball player is told in their first lesson. You should return serve deep. Now, why is that? Well, there are 2 myths about it. The first myth is that if you hit your return deep, you're going to keep your opponents, the serving team, back behind the baseline. And this just simply isn't true. Your opponents, even if your return is nice and deep, they can hit a 3rd shot and still come forward. This is especially true if they hit a 3rd shot drop. So you can't keep your opponents behind the baseline with a good deep return. The second myth is that a deep return gives you more time to get to the net. And this isn't necessarily true either, because if you hit your return deep, but you hit it low and fast, you still won't have much time to get up to the net. It's not the depth of the return that determines how much time you have to come forward, it's the height of your return that determines that. So why is a deep return of serve important? Well, there are 2 good reasons. The first is if your opponents choose to drive their 3rd shot, to hit it low and fast, you'd probably prefer them hitting that low fastball from farther away. And the deeper your return of serve is, the farther away your opponents will be hitting from. And that's good for you, because distance equals time. Their ball has farther to travel, you'll have more time to handle it. The second reason a deep return is useful is because if your opponents do choose to play a 3rd shot drop, hitting that shot from farther away is going to be more difficult than hitting it from close. A drop requires a lot of precision, and it's difficult to be precise from a long distance. If your return of serve is short and allows them to come inside the baseline, they're probably going to have an easier time playing that drop. Whereas a deep return makes it more likely that they hit that 3rd shot drop poorly. If you're playing competitive pickleball, it is really important that you learn to isolate somebody. And what I mean by that is not hit every single ball to them, but hit the majority of balls to that one person. You and your partner should have a good sense of who is it that you're trying to pick on and who is it that you're trying to avoid. And this could be because of a skill level difference, but it also could just be because one player is taller than the other. And a taller player typically has a longer reach into the kitchen, which is something that you want to avoid. Now, this is for competitive play. If you're in a recreational situation and you're isolating someone, you're picking on someone, you're not likely to make a lot of friends. So you're probably going to want to spread out the love a little bit. But if you are playing to win, it is important that you and your partner decide who is it that you're going to hit the majority of balls to, and you stick to that plan until you change it. It's really important to understand the relationship between distance and time, and that's especially true when we're hitting soft shots and fast shots. If you're playing a slower ball, like a drop or a dink, hitting the ball cross-court is often a good idea. Because the distance diagonally across the court will be longer than the distance down the line, your ball has farther to travel. And if you're playing a slow shot meant to give you time to recover or to get into position, this extra time is going to be really valuable. If, however, you're deciding to attack with speed, to hit the ball hard to take away time from your opponents to react, you probably don't want to hit the ball cross court. Instead, you want to hit that ball down the line more often than not. Again, distance and time are related. When you're hitting hard, you're trying to pressure your opponents by taking away their time to react, and hitting down the line will give them less time, all things being equal. When you attack cross-court and the ball has a little bit further to travel, there's a better chance that two players of equal skill will be able to get that ball back in the court. Of course, there will always be exceptions to this rule. Sometimes you're trying to avoid the cross-court person, or sometimes you're trying to pick on the cross-court person. So this isn't a hard and fast rule you always have to follow. But it's important to understand that the farther a ball has to travel, the more time it's going to take to get there. And so if you're defending and trying to buy yourself time, think about using cross courts. And if you're trying to take time away from your opponents, hit it down the line. All right, so there's a decent chance that none of these strategies were totally new to you. Of course, you're in pickleball, probably in pickleball, and there's a very good chance that you've heard about these. But what I hope now that we've come away with is that you start to understand a little bit more about why those strategies matter. And so whether you're a pickleball coach or you're just casually introducing the sport of pickleball to other people, do this for me. Try to not just explain what people should do to them, but why they should do it. So whether we're talking about the depth on the return of serve or the depth of the serve for that matter, when we're talking about where you should hit a shot when you're trying to defend or when you're trying to attack, help people understand why those things matter, and they're going to be way more likely to do.